Welcome back, everybody. Here we are again, Katie. How are
Here
you?
we are. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good. This is really strange because we recorded an interview with Ross Coulthard, however, not that many hours ago, and it feels like a bit strange to be back all of a sudden. But I'm really glad that we're here live as well. Um,
Got a great
yeah,
guest.
we have got a great guest.
Mhm.
Good to see so many people as well in the live chat. Thank you so much for being here. As always, please keep the chat cool, calm, and collected. I really appreciate that. You guys are normally very good at that, so thank you. Also, if you do have any questions throughout the interview, please pop them in capital letters. That gives me a better chance of seeing them. And I will try my best to ask them, but it depends on the relevancy and the way the conversation is flowing and all that good stuff. So thank you guys. And let's get to it, shall we?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Yeah, please welcome a good friend, someone that I really look up to, and I can't wait for this conversation, guys. Put your hands together for Sean Cahill. Sean, how are you?
I'm doing well, Vin. How are you doing? Hi,
I'm
Katie.
doing great.
Hey,
Thank you
happy
so
to
much
have
for
you
doing
here.
this. Yeah.
Happy to be here.
All right. So, Sean, yeah, when I spoke to you about setting up this interview, I wanted to come at it this time from a slightly different perspective and sort of talk a bit more about the consciousness and the kind of meditation aspect and its relationship to the phenomena. So, I guess my first question is, what does consciousness mean to you, and especially when it does relate to the phenomena?
I'm actually happy to say that I take it from a kind of selfish viewpoint because I've lived this whole life as Sean. I've had very few moments of not being Sean. So for me, consciousness is my Seanness. Um, and so for me, when I eventually found, meditation studies and Buddhism and things that branch out from the ancient esoteric practices, the self was something I was familiar with because my Seanness was something that I felt like that I had been working with and fighting my whole life, if that makes sense. So I think that that's the simplest way that I can sum up consciousness, without going right to, the like Buddhist teachings and things like that.
Yeah, no, I makes sense. And I think that a lot of people have that experience, especially when they're beginning this journey, right? They're looking into meditation for the first time, self-consciousness for the first time. And I'm really curious to hear how that started for you, right? Everyone kind of has a different entry point. So what was yours?
I was interested in, to be honest, again, this is not really flattering. I was interested in
Okay.
superpowers when I was young. I wanted all the superpowers. I liked the idea that we were more than this, and I wanted to be that. Um, it really wasn't until I had a heart attack back in 2012, and when they were placing the stent in my heart, I had an OBE. Um,
Right.
and that really changed my perspective on things. I had gone up to the ceiling of this 2-story room where they did the stent procedure, and I had watched the medical team place their feet on the armrest, and when my vein collapsed, and remove the catheter, and then go to reinsert in the femoral artery, and they'd put their foot up on the armrest because they needed to brace themselves for steady pressure. Yeah, it gives me the heebie-jeebies still. And,
Oh, was
but
that obvious?
I watched all that from the ceiling, looking down, and I wasn't freaking out. I wasn't thinking, "Oh wow, there I am," or "I'm out of my body." It was just very calm and casual, just kind of taking it in. But then when the procedure was over and they woke me up, I mentioned to them that I had gone up there and watched them extract the catheter, and they were quite surprised that I was able to describe it with such accuracy because I had been definitely unconscious.
Right.
And so that took a while to really sink in. I would think about it now and again, think about it, and I didn't know what to do with the info until I started having this recurring lucid dream, of my family and I on the highway, and deciding to go across the Coronado Bridge. And as we got on the on ramp, there was a problem with the truck in front of us. We ended up in a car accident and ended up going over the side of the bridge. And each time this is where the dream was always the same and where I woke up. The car's going over the bridge. It's terrifying. But then suddenly I'm in like a yellow, like a cherry picker, like the guys work on the top of trees and power lines with.
Mm-hmm.
And it just tipped forward. And I was the only one there. The family wasn't there. It tipped forward and I was falling down towards what I assumed was the bay,
Mm-hmm.
but it was like a water tornado or a water spout. And I fell in the top of it and I fell and I kept falling. And in this dream, I finally realized, I'm lucid and I'm terrified.
Right.
But I finally realized, okay, hold on. I should have hit the water by now. What's going on? And that's where something else happens. And so that I never quite remembered. So these things were pretty powerful. The OBE and the lucid dream specifically, because I was quite lucid. I mean, it got to the point where I was just kind of falling down the thing, bored, wondering if it will be different this time. And I couldn't figure out how to break out or anything like that back then. So that coupled with the next step was tinnitus. Now, if not for the tinnitus, I might have just put up with the weirdness. But the tinnitus was making me a jerk, even more of a natural jerk than I already was back then. And I was a pretty organic jerk, honestly. I had really hair triggers. But to remedy the tinnitus, I started using binaural beats, and I didn't really know what they were for. I didn't know anything about Monroe or anything like that. And I remember that the first night that I felt what I would later understand is, I guess, what people refer to as hemisync or other things like that. I had decided to put some brown noise. I use an app that does not pay me to endorse them called White Noise. And I put some pink noise in the background this time specifically, and a gamma frequency. And I didn't know anything about frequencies either. So that's actually a pretty high one and a good one to start with. Mm-hmm. But I started humming with it. And it was strange. The only way to describe it's kind of non-visual, non-verbal, but I felt like a bell went off in one ear, one went off up here, and one went off here, and you could just feel them connect. And when that resonance first happens, it's pretty profound. Yeah. And at that exact same moment, like half a tree across from us, we were at Balboa Park at a corgi meetup. We had brought our dog up to Balboa Park. And like this giant tree, just like cracked in half and fell onto the street. Didn't injure anyone, like missed a jogger, missed a car that had just gone by. But at that moment that I felt all of that thing happened. Wow. And so those were big benchmarks for me to finally go, okay, what is this? What is all this? And how do you get there? And I wasn't in a position to do a lot of drugs. So I had to meditate.
Got it. I mean, that it sounds a lot like my experience, to be honest. I had an accidental OBE while using binaural beats as well. Was not an experienced meditator, and it scared the hell out of me. And I think you touched on this before, that at some point it becomes a bit of a, what do I do with this? And where do I go? Especially if you're not, I wasn't a particularly religious person before, so trying to figure out the path forward with that can be challenging. You mentioned, though, in a previous interview that you eventually found ways to kind of cope with that almost overstimulation and then kind of use it. Could you speak a little bit about that? And maybe for folks in the audience who are dealing with that right now?
It wasn't easy at first. It was really, really hard, and I thought I was losing my marbles. I got a therapist, and I walked right in and told her everything. Mm-hmm. And that helped, but it didn't help in the ways that I needed. I needed to find some way I needed a volume dial or a tuning dial of some kind. And for me, I think it became finding out what was the difference between my fear and my intuition. And that took a long time. It took a long time. And that, I think, for each of us involves our own just personal psychology, just regular old run of the mill life that we've led, you know, and whatever makes our inherent fears. You know, we can talk about genetic, you know, markers for, or excuse me, fear, how it's passed down through generational fear.
Right.
But I had to get out of my own way. I had to really look at my own nonsense, my own BS. Where am I the trigger for other people? Where am I the toxic person? How am I the rainy day? And I'm not perfect. My wife will be the first person to tell you, but I'm not quite the same guy that I was 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. For me, it's been very cognitive. Nobody else did anything that made it better. Nobody told me anything that suddenly opened my eyes. I mean, a lot of the interactions I've had in the last few years have opened my eyes, but if nothing, if anything, the last 5 years have given me too much information to the point where I have no idea what the hell's really going on at the end of the day.
Right.
But I know this is crazy for people who have anxiety, and I've had anxiety my whole life. Harsh anxiety, panic attacks, emergency room visits,
Yep.
losing my business at work on other people. Unfortunately, two things happen. I just decided I don't care what happens, and I'm not in charge of you anymore, and I'm not in charge of what happens to you. I'm only in charge of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I started living in that space where it was like, I'm going to tick a lot of people off while I set these boundaries and while I figure out who I am.
Right.
And that's another one, because a lot of people build their boundaries with one hand and hold a fist up with the other. You know, they're just putting bricks down and saying, don't you come near here. And it's like, no, the boundaries are so people can come right up to them. They can punch on them, beat on them, and scream at them. And you get to sit over here calmly and say, no, thank you, instead of kicking and screaming back. That was a huge help. But I hate to say that I had to put faith in my own intuition. That was the thing that really tipped me over the edge past the fear, was trusting myself and saying that these little physical triggers or little physical markers that I have are my body talking to me about something that it can't put into words. And I'm the one that has to put it into words for my body. And that kind of brings us to another point, is this isn't me. I do feel like I reside not quite in this body, but I reside here with this body. I feel like the body and I have a union.
Mm-hmm.
I can take really good care of it and it'll last for a really long time. I can take really bad care of it and it'll still really last for a really long time. But it's going to let me know the whole time that it doesn't want to do it that way.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
And it recently told me, I've had enough. And I thought we already had this conversation. So
yeah.
I think it comes down to, where do you fall? Are you a materialist, or do you fall more onto the spirit side? Like I hate to say, the polarity gets more narrow as time goes by in my life, and I'm able just to see the choices folks have made. I'm trying not to judge them for them anymore, because I've really, in the last few years, I've really felt like the universe has just taken me back to school, and I've been humbled. But what do you do when you feel that way? You know, I mean, where do you go to build? I mean, you know, so right now I'm just keeping the house clean, looking for a job, you know, doing my thing, being good to my wife and kids, but there's nothing spectacular going on. I have to say that balance has taken a little bit of the adventure out of life, because I'm like, okay, now I'm here for the ride.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So many of those points resonated with me about how different I was 10 years ago and how much I'm still learning and working on building myself as a person. And like you said, then taking it back to basics in a way, family, the things that really matter. And yeah, it's amazing how many things that really hit home then. So I appreciate that. So my next question, as this meditation journey has developed and you've probably gone deeper and done different types of meditation, maybe. Have you ever felt
yeah.
like you've had an experience where there was some alternative intelligence involved with you during a meditation?
Yes. And it still happens on occasion in the same way, and I always find it fascinating that I think a lot of people that meditate understand a place that we might call the void, um, a dark, warm, safe place where your whole memory kind of comes and goes there. There, you can spend time very lucid, very conscious there, but as you're meditating, sometimes that drifts. But in the early times that I would find myself there, I would get this sense of faces, very large faces, kind of swooping into that place and going, "What is this?" Yeah, it's just kind of, wrinkle for the idea that they were furrowing their brow, just getting a good look, and then kind of going, "Oh, okay," and then going back out. And it was the strangest thing. That it was right after hypnagogia would, if you've learned to body asleep, mind awake. If you learned how to do that yoga nidra or the Monroe technique or other techniques, hypnagogia is a stage during falling asleep where there's a lot of, it looks like fog is setting in. A gray fog is drifting through a blackness, and sometimes it forms into shapes and other things. For me, it's mostly just a fog, and it either resolves in unconsciousness or lucidity afterward. And there's other things. There's a vibrational sensation and some other movement that you might sense. But right after that hypnagogia, for a long time, I would be back in what's felt like I moved from that void place over to a side instance, just like I had been channeled over into a little waiting room of some point or of some kind, and that something would come and regard me there and look at me and kind of not handle me, but just check me out. And as time went by, that changed. The experience changed, and that stopped. Every once in a while, that still happens. Usually, just when I'm daydreaming. When I was in the hospital recently for my heart, I think I just said that on air. Okay, I was in the hospital recently. I had a second heart attack. I wasn't gonna talk about that today, but I'm not gonna act all weird about it. But I had, for about a week that I was there, because I picked up a staph infection when I was in the hospital as well. Every time I closed my eyes, it was just constant visuals of people. It seemed of people stopping and being like, "Why are you looking at me?" Like stopping, as if I were like a strange person sitting on the ground on the street, and you walked by and you're like reading my sign or something. That's what it seemed like. Like I was interrupting them. For the life of me, I don't know what it was, but it stopped when I left the hospital. Yeah, really weird.
Well, and we're so happy that you're doing well now and everything's all right.
Everything's great. It was a blip. Basically, I had a stent that failed. They replaced the stent, but I was in for a longer period of time because of the staph infection, but everything worked out.
Gotcha.
Good.
Well, we're so glad to hear that. And something you said actually triggered a memory in me. And a friend of mine had kind of challenged me to try the hemisync tapes. And one of the things I experienced, I only did them a few times because frankly, it was too intense for me. And one of the things I experienced that you kind of touched on was that feeling of being kind of channeled to another place at one point. For me, at one point, it was I heard a tone, and I don't even know if the tone was in the tape or if it was something separate. And it kind of, I felt like pulled to another location. And once I got there, the experience was different. Time wasn't linear. It was choppy. It was, and like you said, someone came to regard you, similar thing. And I had never had an experience like that. And it completely shifted my view of non-human intelligence, of what's possible when it comes to meditation. And something that we know now when you're speaking about kind of the materialist versus other paradigms is that meditation can literally rewire your brain, right? Nothing but our intentional thought can influence matter. So you would think that the materialist paradigm there would already evaporate. But I'm really interested, given sort of the anecdotal evidence do we have that the phenomenon can either manipulate matter or our perception of matter? If you believe that, in order to move the UAP conversation forward, we really need to dive deeper into some of this meditation research.
I would completely agree with that. I think there are two sides to the UAP coin that we all have to kind of acknowledge, and that is there is what we call a nuts and bolts side. There is a technological expression of aspects of these things we're talking about.
Right.
But one is not always the other. And I think where we need to get to is that for the folks that haven't had an experience in their life, a personal, actual experience, not just taking something on faith because of a book or another person's anecdote, but once you've had that taste that, hey, I'm not here. I reside somewhere else. Excuse me. And I'm having this experience here now as me. And then you start thinking about, okay, what happens when I go to sleep at night? Where am I? Am I still me when I'm asleep? Is there a relevancy to that me? And how come the weird stuff really happens mostly happens when I'm asleep? And so that alone is just, it's not conclusive. It doesn't say where we are, what's going on. It just says that something's happening. Once we accept that, then I think it's pretty simple to say, well, okay, well, if I'm here and I'm physical and I'm natural and I'm made of matter and elements and fall under these laws, well, then so does everything else that's here. So if something wants to come here from somewhere else, it's gonna be made of stuff from here.
Right.
I feel like we're getting so simple. It starts sounding complicated, but I like, there is another place. So the place I am has technology and matter. So I assume there's some kind of analog for that in another place.
Right.
So once you marry those two concepts, I don't think it's that mind-boggling that there is something here that might not be exactly what it presents as.
Right.
I'm personally ready to find out we are the only indigenous life in this universe, because I can't see any anywhere. And the mental gymnastics for the galactic war that's going on, and I don't know, all the things that people bring up of why, everybody's hiding. And I'm like, well, we're not hiding. We're radiating like crazy. And everybody says, well, if we keep doing that, they're going to come get us. And I don't see them. But if you talk to somebody else, they're like, oh, they're here. They already got us, and I don't mean to be facetious, but I was a trained professional crime scene investigator and forensic investigator, and I was a problem solver. And so coming to ufology with that acumen, not as a believer. I'm also a believer because I'm going through it, but I don't believe what I'm going through.
Right.
And I don't take it at face value for what I'm seeing and experiencing. And I'm not to the bottom of the story yet. So once we marry those two things, I don't think any of it, I think all of it makes sense. Of course, the government's been studying it. Of course, they're reticent to talk about it. It's really weird. And when you get down to, like, if one person can bend a spoon, what can 50 do? What can 100 do? What can a country, a planet do? And that weirds a lot of people out. That's it for them. The spoon thing has been one way to find out whether you're still my friend or not. is to bring the spoon out and talk about it, because some people just nope, all done.
So I don't like to talk about it, but about 10 years ago, I got bored one night and I watched a YouTube video and I snapped a spoon in half, and I kept it for about 10 years. And I mean, it was just no effort. It was just like it was butter, and I've never told anyone, because you're right. It's like that litmus test of, are you able to believe that things are weirder than we give them credit for?
Yeah.
But
and what are you going to do once you believe it?
That's the thing.
For me, it was bury it for a long time.
Yeah.
See, now I'm going to go every time I'm holding a spoon. Now I'm just going to look around and be like, just have a little go. And like, I'm
For the record, I haven't been able to do it since. So
until I went to the Monroe Institute, I used to carry a very heavy gauge spoon around in my shaving kit. And I just, every once in a while, I'd just be somewhere and I'd grab it and I'd just unconsciously hold it, walk around with it, and then look at it and be like, oh, that's still a spoon.
Were you ever able to bend it? Have you gotten there yet?
So not until I guess we'll talk about the Monroe Institute.
Yeah,
please.
that was my next question.
Last year in May, I got invited via Lou gave me a call, hooked me up with a couple of folks. He got invited to go, couldn't go. I don't think the person that organized it is advertising himself at the moment, but a doctor from Purdue. Shucks, I can't remember his college now, but I guess that's fine if I'm not going to say who he was. But he put it together. He got a bunch of us on the phone and Zooming and stuff. Colonel John Alexander, Chris Bledsoe. I should have pulled the list out. Randall Nickerson. Folks we'd recognize from Twitter. Sean Eisborn-Hargan. Exo Academian. Joe McMonigal came down, made an appearance and talked to us. Boy, somebody's going to kill me for not mentioning them for sure.
No pressure.
But we had a lot of folks there, and almost across the board, we were experiencers. There were a few people who had never seen anything, had anything weird, anything like that. But they were people that were some people that were placed high in government in some countries we're friendly with that wanted to get a good look at what this was all about and what folks like us were going through. And we were a very wide-ranging group of experiencers. We had a famous television medium, a few other people. We had some folks that are expert at collecting technical data with cameras and radar, science-related folks. Sorry, we started out talking about this because we're talking about bending the spoon. So another person that was there, oh God, I'm horrible with names. What's Sean's last? Oh, Sean, what's your last name? He's a telekinesis. He did telekinesis for a long time on the. He was well known for that on YouTube. He does so much more. His website is Mind Possible, and I'll remember his last name in a minute. But Sean and a couple of other folks were there, held a class on telekinesis, spoon bending. We intentionally, the 20 or so of us, tried to move a soccer ball together. No results.
Sean McNamara.
Yeah, Sean McNamara is a fantastic guy. He just recently wrote a really good book on cultivating psilocybin. He lives in Colorado where it's legal. Right. So it's a fantastic book. But that's a whole nother show and a whole nother topic. So they taught us two techniques for spoon bending in general. One was subtle and one was more energetic. And in between the two, the first technique that we did, I had zero results. And I could already tell I was getting frustrated. I was feeling feelings of envy. I could tell that I wanted to feel special. Those are things I look out for those things. And I'm like, okay, you can't play if you're going to be that way. And so I was disenchanted but then she brought out some pendulums, and pendulums were something that I had studied along with tarot and other things early on as subconscious access modalities, wanting to understand them. And I'd had success and understood how a pendulum worked and was able to tell my nonsense from the intuitive side of it. So she said, we all had a fork and a spoon. She said, ask the fork if it'll bend for you, maybe just this once. And the fork said, nope. And with the pendulum. And so I again, downtrodden and knowing, the worst part is sitting there knowing I'm doing it wrong because I'm letting my emotions in. And I know I'm going to fail because I'm disappointed, that kind of thing. I'm letting it get to me. And I asked the spoon, will you just this once, you know? And I literally, like, my interior attitude was literally like really like that. I was like, would you just maybe, would you? And the spoon said, sure, just this once. I mean, that was the message I got back. And I was like,
Okay.
oh, okay. All right. So we got it. We went about it. And she was saying, you know, build up your intent. And I had decided, in fact, I should grab the spoon. Is that okay to get up and walk over here?
Yeah,
please.
please. All right.
Oh,
Special guest appearance from the spoon.
man, I'm kicking myself that I didn't keep mine. I threw it away like a year ago. I was like, this is stupid. Why am I holding on to this?
I'm going to go and get one tonight and just be like, yes. Oh, wow.
So I wasn't happy just
Hey.
bending it in half because I
Twist.
knew I was strong enough to do it. And I had snapped off the tine of one of on the fork. And I didn't believe that. Like you said, you snapped yours. I was like, I just broke it. I'm just way stronger than I think. And,
See, I'm weak, so that wasn't a problem.
so I pinched the bowl of the spoon and I pinched the end. And I was like, I want to twist it. And if it really does, and we had just watched a video that Uri Geller had sent specifically to us. He was gonna Zoom with us, but he something happened where he had a scheduling difficulty, so he just had somebody turn his camera around and filmed a video. But he's just, I mean, he's in a shop with thousands and thousands of bent spoons, and I mean, unless you really think he's surrounded by hundreds of pounds of gallium or whatever, you know, he's got something going on. So I was like, I have to do this in a subtle way. It has to go molten like it looks like it goes for him, or I'm never going to believe it. So sum it up, get all the intent. And we called it a guerrilla technique. You're going to jump up in the air. And when you're in the air, you're going to shout. You're going to tell it. You're going to bend. You're going to, you know, you are telling it. You are a gorilla and you are powerful. And you're going to use all of your monkey mind to do it. And I landed in this. I don't know what to say about that. This is a high quality piece of cutlery, and it bent. It did something I haven't been able to do again, no matter how hard I try.
Yeah.
It doesn't tell me that I'm psychic or have telekinesis or any of that. It tells me that human intent has influence over matter. That's all it tells me. And I can accept that.
Not to take anything away from you being able to do that, but being in a place where other people were building their own intent, could in some way you have gathered extra energy from other people?
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, I would imagine that's possible. It's frightening if you look at it from a certain way. And then again, it makes a lot of sense when you think about how often we all gather in a place surrounding an individual in front of a microphone or on a stage.
Right.
And they're the same people over and over again. So that's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Like I said, I wasn't taking anything away from you. I truly
no.
I was just thinking about, you know, this putting myself in that place, and I automatically imagined other people almost in a line doing something similar with this buildup of something around us all. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I like a lot of folks who have experienced this stuff. There's two ways to go. A lot of folks dive in, believe everything, and then you end up like we've all seen that video of the guy running down the beach with the lady, you know, and they're trying to put up their chi walls. And I mean, we can't help but laugh. Yeah. I mean, I believe in chi or prana, you know, energy, but I don't think I can stop a linebacker. But you know, not at all. I can't stop. But again, what if we knew what we were doing? You know, we're wishing right now, but I've sat around a lot and I still can't figure out what's the first thing I should do now that I know this, other than try to share the story pragmatically, get other people to, you know, chill out, don't go too woo. You know, you get inspired. We're all in different parts on our journey, and sometimes inspiration takes us on wild goose chases, and sometimes it leads to brilliance. But there's something to this that matters, and the fact that none of our institutions teach it. None of our institutions teach any kind of, like, the word intuition is still something that's not real. You know, we've all got it, but don't trust it. Oh, you trust yours? Well, I don't trust mine. Nah, I think we've all had enough synchronicities. A lot of us have. The people who are having this conversation have had enough synchronicities,
Right.
and then went and did a little bit of research and have had enough conversations to say there's enough going on here. We should organize, and we should apply science and pragmatism to this. There, of course, we need an emotional side, but it's like we're back to that point where we need to remarry physics and philosophy and science and religion back into one thing, which is the study of reality again. Not just into these balkanized groups of, no, my God's better than yours, and my theory is better than yours, and my lack of evidence is way better than your lack of evidence. So
Well, I mean, that's a perfect segue into what I was going to ask you about. Is I just finished reading Unbelievable. It's a book that kind of covers the history of the Duke's parapsychology program that started up, I believe, in the 50s. And one of the things I was struck by in it was how ubiquitous this type of research was early on, right?
Yeah.
You had Duke doing it, you had Harvard doing it, you had the University of Virginia getting their hands into the matter, and that's obviously taken a bit of a step back in recent years. And speaking of psychic telekinesis, ESP, whatever you want to call it, there is a pretty hefty body of academic evidence supporting it. Now, you can argue about the methods and conclusions, but what's really interesting is it was actually done in a very methodical, statistical way. There were even actually the anthropologist Margaret Mead was a big proponent of this research and pointing out how sound the methodology was. And so my question is, how do you think we address the fact of what you said, that our institutions aren't teaching this? How do we go back and rebuild this body of knowledge in a way that it doesn't get shelved for another 20 years?
How do you have a revolution in society without the revolution? How do you have a large body of people who are otherwise okay with the status quo and frightened into being relatively docile to give up everything they have? I don't like labels, so I'll throw out a few that I don't feel. I'm not a prepper. I'm not a constitutionalist. I'm not a sovereign person kind of guy, but I'm aware of facts. I know that our educational system was developed by those in power who wanted good workers. I understand that. And I think if you had been anyone looking at the world at that time, you might have even said, you know what, that's a good thing for us right now. That's what we need. We're in this, well, I don't know if you're in the Industrial Revolution when it's happening, but they were in the middle of it, and they were like, yeah, that's what we need. We need progress was the word.
Right.
But we've somehow gotten rid of that word progress. We took that awesome jump in materialism, successful materialism, and we did great things with it, and we did some horrible things with it. But we chose not to highlight the other aspects of us. I can't help but see a little bit of a purposefulness in that. The 60s and 70s, even though the free love movement and the hippies obviously didn't win and apparently didn't learn anything, since now they're still voting like their parents did. But we didn't fix anything just by having everybody say how it should be, and nothing. I shouldn't say nothing changed. There's people who have built lives on aspects of social change that did occur, and I don't want to. They dedicated, people lost their lives for those. I don't want to say nothing changed. A lot of things changed, but we're not at a place yet where any human being on this earth, on this planet, has the same rights as any other given human being, or has the same expectation of safety or respect or anything like that. Why not? Well, I think honestly, and this will turn so many people off, but we forgot to love each other. We forgot to take care of our neighbors. And we just kept looking for ways to progress and succeed, but we didn't bring our heart, we didn't bring our minds along with us.
Mhm.
And it's sad because you can see it, and you can see the amount of people that don't know what's going on, that only take their worldview from their electronics, essentially from their television, their phone, their computer. And even those that will go a little bit further and pick up a book here and there, and I don't mean to be condescending like that and say it that way, but
Yeah.
not a lot of people are reading anymore, or going beyond what's given to them.
Mhm.
Even at that point, you're still not getting the whole story. But we lose most folks that at that point because they get angry. Their rage gets there and they go, "Oh my God, we've really been manipulated
Right.
and stepped on and held back." And nobody wants to listen to the person yelling in the elevator. So they don't get heard.
Yeah.
And I think we all kind of know that. So it's like, who will be the person to stand up to finally strike that chord with all of us? What will be the event that has us say no more?
Mhm.
I thought we've had 20 of those just in the last 5 years.
You and me both.
Looking back at the way the George Floyd event unfolded,
Yeah.
I'm so scarred over at this point. You know, my wife is a speech therapist. She works in the schools, and we constantly talk about how there have now, at this point, the idea that there have been more shootings in days in the year,
Yeah.
that's got to be the last straw. Please, could it be the last straw? You know, children should have been the last straw, but can just the blatant idiocy of these numbers be the last straw?
Yeah.
And the fact that this just isn't happening anywhere else. It's not.
No.
And
not.
the idea that we can't, as what I would call an American family, still come to the table and go, can we do it for the kids? You know, and so anyway, that's politics. That's not the consciousness stuff we want to talk about. But
That's another day. Yeah. No, but I feel you, buddy. I really do. It can be tough. And Vinny, I know I only can imagine what it looks like as an outsider looking in.
Yeah, it's hard to comprehend how these things keep happening and nothing is getting done, because you get so many people, and I won't go on about it, but all we see is people defending the Constitution and the right to bear arms and things like that. That's what's coming across the pond a lot more than just stop. Find another way, you know. So anyway, yeah. That is another conversation for another time, but I appreciate it being brought up and that. So let's shift the conversation slightly, Sean, because something we heard about a few months ago that was flying around Twitter and other places was a supposed meeting you had with one Lady Gaga, and I just wondered if you could expand on that and give us the story.
Are you guys best friends now?
No. I did avoid becoming her enemy, but I have to be honest with you, I did not get to meet her. Everybody else that was there did, but Lou and I had been asked by Gary Nolan to, and Lou, Chris Mellon, and I had been asked by Gary Nolan to speak at a Parker Foundation dinner that he was at with Sean Parker. They have an oncology foundation that is cancer research. Very illustrious list of people who donate who are part of the Parker Foundation and who donate to it. The people that I was sitting with that evening were Sean Parker and his wife, Lou, Jacques Vallée, Steve Jobs' son. I can't remember his name anymore after a year and a half. And let's see, there were a couple of Nobel Prize winners at the table. Lady Gaga was at the table behind us. My wife was at the table behind me. She was at her chair was right behind me, so I could reach back and grab her. But that night, Gary outed himself for the first time as having worked on these programs. And so the first people that he got to tell were some of his colleagues in oncology and in academia, as it should be. And they got to hear from the horse's mouth what that Gary had been working on these programs and that he had knowledge about them and understanding. And then we talked about our parts. When we were done, Lou said to me, "Hey, Sean, come here." And I made a beeline right for him. He was with this a little Italian lady. And I didn't look at her. I just told him, "No, man, I gotta go use the bathroom." And he's like, "No, come here for a second." And I'm like, "No." And I walked right at him and went around him and went about 4 or 5 doors down where there was nobody. And then I nervously threw up in the bushes on the side of a building, because the whole thing just had me nervous. This was not my scene. It was way more opulent than I was used to. Everybody's looking at me and asking me all these big questions. And I got back and he's like, "Hey man, what was that?" And I go, "What do you mean?" "I didn't feel good. I had to go use the bathroom." He goes, "Well, you just blew off Lady Gaga." And I'm like, like the one person I wanted to meet. So yeah, I didn't meet her. I guess she was still in had the hair and the general look of the geez, what movie was it? Like Versace or something like that, some fashion movie. I don't know who it was, but she had just done that, and so she didn't look like Gaga,
Right?
And so I didn't recognize her. But yeah, that's that story.
Wow.
But she was into UAP apparently, right?
Well, I don't. Yeah, she had a lot of. Apparently, she wanted to ask me some questions about my experience. She'd been talking to. She was very interested in it. Without talking about anyone's specific personal stories, I did talk to so many people that night, well-placed folks in both government, society, entertainment, etc., who were all experiencers. And I have not been a fan of that word over the years, but I haven't come up with a better one we're having an experience.
Right.
So I haven't found a better one to replace it with. So I just have to give in. But
weirdos.
The amount of really well-educated, lucid, cogent people who have had daylight interaction with whatever the phenomenon is a little ridiculous when you get down to it, because it really makes you wonder about some of the stories we hear about government and politicians who may or may not have had abduction experiences, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, I mean, it's remarkable when you actually start raising this, lifting the stigma. Apologies. How many people do share details about this? I mean, one of the things that really struck me when you were speaking on a recent interview also was how often we kind of forget about them or just kind of set them aside. Maybe it's a psychological coping mechanism. I don't know. But you mentioned that you had kind of a series of different experiences from the metal basketballs that were, I guess, 20 feet or so to the green orbs, to the black triangles, and that you had experienced, at least on one occasion, kind of just forgetting about it. Do you think that's something that is intentional with the phenomenon? Do you think it's just a product of our psychology and how we cope with it? What are your thoughts on that?
I think even though I'm not a fan of duality and want to get away from it, it's useful. There's two sides to this coin as well. If we want to think of it benevolently, I'm still frightened of the phenomenon. What I mean by that is if I go sit outside and I will myself to imagine what it would be like if a craft came down and somebody got off and came up and talked, I end up frightened, excited, but frightened.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean that you couldn't tranquilize me to the point where I could still have a conversation, be a useful person to communicate with. But I know I'm frightened. And I also know that if I did see all of that today, I'd be a blabbermouthed idiot when I was done if I remembered everything. I really would be. And I think I would, given all we've been through in the last X amount of years and the fact that we're still here, I think I'd risk losing my family. I've kept it together, even though it's been weird. And it's been pretty weird at times. This was not an easy thing to bring home and have people go, "You did that?" Like somebody give that to you, but you did it. But then again, you've got Colonel John Alexander saying recently on a podcast that his team had utilized neurolinguistic programming to place the idea that an abduction had occurred in a subject's mind.
Right.
So we know that manipulation is possible. And if the manipulation causes you to question your memory, now the origin of that memory is a question.
Right.
So a lot of people, again, with that duality, fall one of two ways. They fall over into the, well, the aliens are protecting me from something that might hurt me otherwise. And you've got the folks that are falling over on the other side that go, no, it's all brainwashing from the government. And as with most of these things, somewhere in the middle is where the truth lies. It bothers me that that we can. If you've taken an interest in psychology and group dynamics and things like that, if you've ever seen the there's a very famous video that's shown of people playing basketball. There's a bunch of movement. It's very, very dynamic. And in the middle of it, a person in a gorilla suit walks right through.
Yep.
You miss it.
And most of us watch that the first time and we don't see the gorilla. The blue dress meme a couple of years ago on TikTok, where we were all perceiving.
It is not blue.
It's gray. It's gray, right? Or pink.
No, it's white and gold. White and gold.
That's the one.
But you can sit there and change the color while looking.
Oh, really?
At it. Yeah, you can. And
yeah,
that should tell us a lot. Not enough to go, I got it. I know who's doing it. But it should tell us that we're easily manipulated.
Yeah.
Again, why am I so easily manipulated? And what can I do about it? Is there anything that I can do to counteract that?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's worrisome. I don't want what we call a bad state actor to have access to this kind of information.
No.
I don't want them to know that a series of lights and sounds and frequencies can completely change the mood and tone of a large group of human beings. And perhaps, and that, I mean, we've all been frightened at some point of the idea of subliminal influencing and things like that. But the fact is it's on our televisions. It's a part of our advertising, whether it's what we have been taught to see as subliminal, blatant, backward masking, like the Beatles that everybody was freaked out about. They were just being artists. But nanosecond flashes of images can affect your impulse buying. And the way things are presented, songs are more moving when vowels are used in the rising choruses and things like that. Most folks don't know there's only like 6 chord progressions on the radio for the last 25 years. You've been buying the same songs over and over again. Again, what do we do with that? I turned my TV off. I watch. I use it for pure entertainment at this point. And I got rid of a lot of my apps, and I'm not talking about some bro stuff like delete your Facebook, go to the gym, and but at the same time, are you using your tech, or is your tech using you? Are you living to just keep paying Apple and Samsung? And is that why you're living, to buy their products and to wear them and to support them? I mean,
yeah.
I'll try. I have to stay away from the politics, but I can't help but say we have people that took a political candidate and made him an idol. We never did that before. We liked Ike, but not that much.
It was like, not love.
Yeah. So everything's become, I hate to, again, we're a broken record. Everything's become a product. Now you can label me a hippie and you don't have to listen to me anymore. But what happened? There's a dichotomy right now that has no future to it. That is just chaotic. I don't know. It's a chaotic avalanche. Unless at some point, like Vin said, we just stop. We stop being jerks. Everybody just says, okay, what do you need from me? I haven't seen our leaders say, what do you need from me, in a long time.
Yeah.
So what do we do? There's the 3 of us. I guess you and I've got San Diego County covered.
Yeah.
Then I'll take care of Great Britain.
Yeah.
Got to start somewhere, though. You know,
For
and you
sure.
start in your household, start in your neighborhood, and
That's true though. You do. And that your household is the best place you can start. If you can heal your home, if everybody went home and healed their home, it'd be an amazing tomorrow. But so many people are too hurt. So many people are going to wait at home and say, no, come heal me.
Right.
So
That's true. You know, I was very conscious, no pun intended, about the way this interview would flow and the things we'd talk about, as to not sort of delve too deeply into specific UFO news and current events. So I'll kind of flip the question and say, has there been anything that's you've been following or kept your interest in the past 6 months, for example, that has cropped up in the community or in the community that you think is worth discussing, mentioning, or something that maybe piqued your interest?
well, I think we all kind of went, in the Navy, we'd say high and right on the balloon issue.
Oh yeah.
Um, I think folks they take the product that they're given and they make a conclusion. A lot of times you track it back a little bit, and what's the origin of that thing? Why is it happening? And while I've said I'm not a fan of people saying why now our UAP, a year ago people would say why now, and it's, man, because we've been working our butts off. I mean, Vin knows we worked together. Vin was part of what we called Skyfort East until we shut Skyfort down, but because we worked our butts off. We worked our butts off to get to say 5 words to some people on occasion, and
Yep.
to get to say 5 more later on. So it wasn't just now. You might be seeing it now, but the balloon thing is pretty simple. Everything we've all been working on for the last X amount of years finally came to fruition with our defense apparatus, NORAD, et cetera, removing certain filters and certain guidelines on what was reported, how things were detected, et cetera. And what immediately happened? There's a balloon here, there's a balloon there, there's a thing here, there's something stopped over here. What's going on? Now, the first things we got pictures of were a prosaic a prosaic balloon, a large weather balloon type balloon with solar panels and some kind of collection apparatus underneath. And then after that, we got stories, anecdotal eyewitness testimony from plenty of good observers about shapes and speed and location. And then somebody started muddying the waters. Somebody's anonymous person said, we think it's Chinese tech with anti-gravity. It's like, hold on a second.
Right.
All we know right now is that we turn the lights on, and when the roaches scattered, the biggest, slowest roaches were the ones that we got pictures of and that we saw and that we stepped on. Everything with capability got the hell out of the way, or it's going to start showing up a lot more and getting reported a lot more. But people keep defaulting to we want to know, we need to know, we have a right to know. All of those things are all true, but the apparatus is not set up for you to know, not anywhere near immediately. So anything that was of interest, you're not going to hear about it unless it has a political gain for the administration or the military to make it public.
Right.
So if there was an octagonal 5 observable UAP in the Yukon or somewhere else, I don't think we're going to get that info yet, because we're still seeing portions of Congress and the Senate being educated for the very first time that this is even real.
Yeah.
So to drop a big bomb like that on everybody immediately, I think people would, I don't know. We're going to fight the whole time until the day that we are walking amongst whatever this is without fear and with as much as complete understanding. People are going to wonder every day until then if this is Project Bluebeam. Is this governmental manipulation? Is this China's version of Project Bluebeam? Is it the global conglomerate of carpet salesmen? I don't know. Whoever you think runs the world, is it them? And we can't help that. And I think it's a good place for us to be suspicious of that, because we are finally at a place where the technology exists. Between drones, holograms, NLP, phones in your pocket, flash mob mentality. It's a scary time for people to try to pull the wool over our eyes.
Yeah.
But that's aside to the fact that this phenomenon has been here present for all of our history. I'm completely confident in saying that. So again, what are we dealing with here? Well, we're dealing with humanity, which we're stuck with.
Yep.
Every day of the week. And their humanity's machinations and greed. But we're also stuck with humanity's compassion, intelligence, ingenuity, love, and ability to transcend. We're still here. I don't know how many asteroids have hit us. I don't know how many tidal waves or crustal displacements or other things that everybody worries about have happened before. We've gone down to around 100, they think, at some point in South Africa, 100 human beings, as we call them. And now we know that we're all hybrids. Every single one of us is a hybrid.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one here that's not a hybrid of different hominids,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, Denisovan, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So the old world thinking that races exist in a fashion that's useful, the fact that the out of Africa theory, all of these other theories about how exactly things went that paint a Eurocentric picture of the world, we're safe to get rid of them now. We're safe to get rid of that Eurocentrism. We're safe to embrace the fact that India has a longer, richer history than Europe did.
Right.
We're able to look into China and see just how technologically incredible they were when the rest of us were dealing with the Black Plague, and how Islam basically saved science.
And started universities, and
absolutely. And how all of these religions that we come and go with have been the aggressor, the oppressor, the victim, the savior at some point in the time that they've existed. At the end of all of it, what does it say? We're all the same. We're just different painted containers full of the same water, pointing at each other and going, "You're different because I only see the blue." Well, I'm full of water just like you.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets preachy. But celebrating diversity, that's what celebrating diversity is. And it shouldn't frighten people to have more variety of different things that can interact with each other and communicate, people and things that can communicate with each other. That tells us more about this environment. The more eyes we have on this, the closer we're going to get to actually understanding where we are. So I think that's the key to everything. So if you're a materialist and you say, what is the nuts and bolts value of UAP and how can I use it to succeed and dominate from a nationalistic sense, or whether you look at it and say, wow, man, where are they coming from? Who are they? What do they think? What do they know? Why do they want to talk to us? You've got both of those sides exist. And we have to stop pretending that that the other folks don't exist and that they don't have a right to exist.
Right.
That's been the hardest part for me is, and that sounds harsh, but the idea that the dissenting opinion that you believe is wrong, does it have a right to keep being heard?
Yeah.
There was a time when I was certainly wrong, and I wanted the right to continue to be heard. So,
right.
No, what a fantastic answer. That's
great.
No,
absolutely. And I want to be really mindful of your time because we're very lucky to have you. But I do want to ask, so we spoke just a little bit about the recent past. What are you looking forward to in this year? Do you think, is there anything coming up that is gonna tickle your fancy or that we should be looking out for? I saw that smile.
Yeah. I think a lot of good things in a historical way, for the record, are going to occur this summer. That's the closest I can come with that one.
Okay.
A lot of people have been given the power and the safety to use their voice for the first time. Now, I think people should look forward probably to seeing a lot more pictures of UAP. And the reason that I say that is because I have some good information that there are some private groups that have correctly determined a way to capture UAP on photo.
Wow.
I'm not 100% on board with it yet. I'm still waiting to get some equipment back and to verify it myself. But I have a feeling we're about between the new deepfake stuff being the new deepfake being very accessible and affordable. The audio fakes now. And the fact that we have a perfect storm here. I don't like it a bit. With the filters coming off at NORAD, we're going to see all kinds of crap scattered across the radar now. With the ability to deepfake being at the 13-year-old wallet level, it's going to be really hard. We're going to really need audiovisual experts to be telling us the real from the not real now.
Right.
And it's kind of gotten to be too much all at once. So I think we need, as time goes by, we need to be careful. Don't jump to conclusions. Remember that there are people out there for whatever reason, whether they're actively hiding something that they know about the phenomenon, or whether it's just a cognitive block, or maybe they're just jerks, and work for a lousy newspaper. I don't know. But the fact is that not everybody out there is going to see the forest for the trees. They're going to cherry pick this thing. They're going to come at it emotionally. And we don't want any of that. We want pragmatic, scientific, observational, non-biased information on something that we don't fully understand.
There you go. That's great.
So we could have done this in person today. So I'm just saying that next time, so we could have just been hanging out at the bar.
I would love it.
And Vinny could have been in the studio. I mean, we could
what do you got going on later today? I mean, come on.
Actually, it's my daughter's birthday, so I actually
happy birthday to
her. That's exciting.
Yeah, big 19.
Oh, that's amazing. Amazing.
Well, have fun with the family then. That's gonna be great.
Yeah, yes. Korean barbecue tonight. So.
Oh, that sounds good. That sounds really good. Well, listen, Sean, thank you so much. Really appreciate every time we speak is fantastic. I appreciate you, what you've done, and just being a friend means the world. So thank you so much.
Same here. It's really a pleasure to get to talk about these things. You too, Katie. We don't get to share these things in an environment like this where it's fully safe, where everybody is listening, and where we have something to give back and we don't feel judged. So I really appreciate the ability to get to share these experiences. Thanks, guys.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And to everyone in the live chat, thank you so much for being here. I'm sorry if I didn't get around to all your questions. If you did donate, I saw a couple of pop up. Thank you so much for the support. I really appreciate it. Katie, thank you for being such a wonderful co-host as well. It's been great. We've had a real day of it. 2 days for you, but time zones and all that.
I'm gonna go sleep after this.
Yeah, me too. But guys, we have a premiere of our interview with Ross Coulthart coming up this Saturday, so check that out. But for now, guys, thank you once again, and we'll see you soon. Take care. Goodbye.